All right, my business bestie, answer me this. What time do you start work most days? Like, not what time are you supposed to start work or when do you try to start work? What time do you reliably, most days, sit down and begin your workday? If you had to pause and think about that just a little bit, you are in very good company, and that may not necessarily be a good thing. Welcome back to Small Business Simplified. I'm Karin Velez, your business big sister and a multi-passionate entrepreneur with 25 plus years of building small businesses and helping others to do the same. This month, we've gone through a little bit of a reset series on the podcast. We opened with burnout and how much of it comes from running on empty without noticing. We talked about decision fatigue and how every small unplanned choice in your day drains the same tank that you need for the choices that matter the most. And then last week, we talked about letting AI maybe take some of that stuff off your plate. Today, we're going to talk about your working hours. And here's my confession for this one. I have run businesses from my kitchen table, my garage, a corner of my bedroom, a home office, you name it, for well over 2 decades. And the freedom of working from home is really one of the best parts of this entrepreneurial life. I also know from personal experience how easily that freedom turns into, oh, well, I'll just work whenever I have a spare minute, which sounds flexible, but instead it leaves you working constantly, everywhere, all the time, with no minute that is truly off of work. So today's episode is part celebration of why home-based work is so good for us, and part building a container so that good thing doesn't slowly take over your whole life. Working from home makes real productivity and real savings possible, and consistent hours are what let you keep both of those things. The flexibility of a home office is absolutely an advantage, but flexibility without something to keep it contained turns into hours that stretch in every direction and a business that never fully turns off. Let's get into it. So let's make the case for working from home in the first place, because I think a lot of solopreneurs maybe carry a little bit of guilt around this. Somewhere along the way, we picked up this idea that if we're not in an office, then we're not really working. That belief is super outdated, and the research absolutely backs that up. So let's start with productivity. Stanford economists have tracked remote and hybrid work outcomes for over 10 years. And the research has consistently found that people working from home complete individual tasks with fewer interruptions, less commute fatigue, and more control over their environment than their in-office counterparts. Multiple studies out of that body of work have found that remote workers performing at a meaningfully higher level on individual task completion, okay? So that is what happens when you remove a commute and a noisy office and back-to-back hallway or water cooler conversations from someone's day. Then there's financial side. And this one matters a lot for us as solopreneurs or tiny business owners. Working from home eliminates a huge share of the overhead that eats up most business budgets, like office rent and utilities, a commute, coffee runs, right? A full work wardrobe. Estimates on remote work savings run into the thousands of dollars a year once you account for those reduced commuting costs and reduced food and clothing spend, and the home office tax deduction that's available to self-employed business owners. So for a one-person or two-person business, that can be the difference between a business that is just barely surviving and one that has real breathing room because there's just more margin there. So think about what this looks like in a real week, right? A solopreneur who is working from their spare bedroom skips the 40-minute commute, skips the $5 to $7 to $9 coffee run, skips the blazer that she might have bought for a job that she no longer has to actually dress for, and gets an uninterrupted hour of focused work before anyone else in the house is even awake. Multiply that across a year. And you are looking at real money and real hours of focus that a traditional office just does not offer. So, working from home is not something to apologize for or explain away to clients or to friends or to family members, okay? It is a legitimate, research backed advantage for both your output and your bottom line. But here's where this gets a little complicated. The blurred line between home and work is also very well documented. So when your office is also your kitchen or your living room or your spare bedroom, there is no physical cue that tells your brain the workday is over. So research on decision fatigue tells us that your capacity for good decisions is a resource that depletes over the course of a day, the same way that a muscle gets tired with repeated use. Every time you decide in the moment whether now is a work minute or a personal minute, whether to answer that message tonight or wait until morning, whether today is a work day at all, you are spending some of that limited resource on a decision that a consistent schedule would have made for you automatically. So picture a normal day without a set schedule. You wake up and you wonder whether you should check your email before breakfast. You might start folding laundry at 10 a.m. and then wonder whether that counts as a break, or if you're just delaying some aspect of your work that you really aren't motivated to do. A client message comes in at 6 o'clock while you're making dinner, and you stand there deciding whether or not you should answer it right away or wait until the morning. None of those are big decisions individually, but that is 4 or 5 extra decisions that a traditional schedule would have already answered for you. And those are happening every single day on top of every real business decision that you're also trying to make. Inconsistent hours are not just a scheduling issue. They are a decision fatigue generator, because every single day without a set start and stop time is a full day of tiny little renegotiations with yourself about when you're supposed to be working and when you're not. And we've already talked about burnout this month, and we know burnout rarely comes from just one hard week. It builds from a pattern where work has no edges. Evenings and weekends slowly sort of become negotiable, and where the business owner never fully steps out of work mode because there was never a moment that clearly marked the end of it. A shutdown ritual, a clear stop time, even a simple habit like just closing the laptop and saying out loud, "I'm done for the day." Okay, that gives your brain the same signal that leaving the office and starting a commute used to give it. Without that signal, one more email turns into another hour, night after night, until the always on feeling never really lifts, okay? I am speaking, unfortunately, from experience here. I've been in the position where I felt like I needed to answer emails right away when there was no clear, defined end to my workday, even when I was running an office out in town. And as someone who is currently running 3 businesses from her home, I sometimes still slip into that trap where a project just needs a little bit more of my attention, and then suddenly, poof, 2 hours have gone by and nobody has eaten dinner, and now my sleep is being disrupted because my brain won't shut off, okay? So trust me, you are not alone in this, but that does not mean it's okay for us to do that on a regular basis. Yes, sometimes you might have projects, or you might have product launches or something that is going to require you to just not turn off for a brief moment in time. But we have to set those boundaries, okay? That is an occasional thing. That should not be an all the time thing. The other part of this is how consistent hours protects your clients and your deliverables. So, trust in a service-based relationship is built almost entirely on consistency. Clients can't usually evaluate the quality of your expertise before they hire you. So they're leaning on other signals instead. That might be how quickly you respond, how predictable your delivery windows are, whether the thing that you said would happen on Tuesday actually happened on Tuesday. Research on professional services trust points to the same conclusion over and over again. Credibility gets you hired, but consistency is what keeps a client and what turns a one-time customer into someone who refers you to other people. And what might surprise you if you're working from your home is that your clients never need to know your exact hours, and you never have to be available around the clock. What consistent hours gives is a dependable production rhythm behind the scenes. So your delivery dates hold and your response windows stay predictable, but you're not making a new tired decision every single day about when the client work gets done. Again, I have been here. When I first started my small business management company, I was suffering from some chronic diseases or chronic illnesses that had developed while I was in the Marine Corps. As a matter of fact, that is why I started my business in the first place, was because I had been medically retired and I knew that I wouldn't be able to go and work a traditional job for somebody else. So I started my own company. And the initial feeling was, well, because I have very weird requirements around my health, then I will work when I can. And that worked for a little while, but work when I can turned into, let me get this done real quick between this other thing that's going on. And let me do this real quick while I'm waiting for this to happen. And there never really was a defined end to my day, and my weekends were not protected. And eventually, everything just sort of ran together. And when I did eventually open a business or an office out in town with that business, it sort of spilled over to that too. Yes, we had predictable open hours in the office, and my contractors and my employees adhered to those, as did I. But I was also answering emails or checking my email before I would even leave the house in the morning, before I got to the office. The office was supposed to be the container that made my office hours or my work hours defined. And it didn't work that way. So once I closed down that office and I moved back into working from my home, I really worked at trying to make sure that I had very defined times of when I work. And that continues to today. Now, it may not look traditional, and we'll talk about that here in the next section, but it is still defined from day to day and week to week. A business that runs on scattered whenever I get to it hours tends to produce scattered whenever I get to it results, even when the person running it is very talented and very hardworking. A business built with some stable guardrails around those working hours just produces work that a client really can rely on. Now, here's the part that I really want you to hear, because I don't want this episode to sound like I'm telling you to become a 9 to 5 person if that has never once worked for your brain or your life. There has rarely been a time in my years of owning businesses where I kept 9 to 5 hours or 8 to 5 hours, whatever, okay? There is a real science behind why some of us are simply wired for different hours. It's called chronotype. Your chronotype is your body's natural preference for when you feel alert and when you feel foggy, and it's driven by your circadian rhythm. So roughly 40% of our productivity tendencies can be traced back to this natural rhythm. Some of us are wired to think most clearly first thing in the morning. Some of us don't hit our sharpest thinking until well into the evening or even the middle of the night. Research has found that when night owls are allowed to work during their actual peak alertness instead of being forced into an early schedule, their output matches or even exceeds that of early risers working their own peak hours. The problem with the standard 8 to 5 is that schedule assumes that everyone's peak hours look the same. That means if you do your best thinking from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m., or your real working window is 9 a.m. to noon, and then again after your kid's bedtime, or your whole business happens during school hours and nap time, None of that is a lesser version of a real schedule. I know a bookkeeper who does her sharpest work like after 10 o'clock, once the house is finally quiet, and she can knock out that work 3 times faster than trying to work through the earlier hours with constant interruption. I know plenty of creatives who work on their craft between school drop off and pickup 5 days a week without fail. And those are the only hours that they work. None of those look like a traditional workday, and yet they all run very steady, very dependable businesses because those hours repeat every single week. What makes any schedule a real schedule is that it repeats. The consistency is the ingredient that makes any set of hours work, whether they're traditional or not. A predictable window, however unconventional it might be, gives your brain the same decision fatigue relief, gives your business the same delivery reliability, and gives you the same clear edges around rest that a traditional 8 to 5 might give somebody else. My schedule changes throughout the week, but in the same way every single week. Each day looks different from the one next to it, but each day looks pretty much the same as its counterpart from the week before. Monday has the same hours every Monday, and it looks completely different than Tuesday, but it's consistent. The one thing that chronotype research is very clear about is that fighting your natural rhythm to force yourself into hours that don't fit tends to backfire. And it shows up as more fatigue and lower output, not more productivity. It also shows that people who are starting a new venture or running a side hustle around another job or around families or other obligations actually perform better when the hours they work are focused, even if they're shorter than a traditional workday. I can tell you, any parent who has tried to work on a specific work project during nap time or during soccer, practice or whatever, having that hard deadline really lights a fire in that brain to go, okay, I have got to focus and I've got to get this done. So the goal isn't picking the right hours, and I'm using air bunnies here. The goal is picking real hours, ones that you can keep, and then just keeping them on repeat. We also need to understand that consistent hours also protect you from your own good intentions, and this includes me. When your hours are undefined, every request that comes in, whether it's a client's urgent email or a friend's midday coffee invitation or a family member who just assumes that you're free because you work from home, well, those all have to be evaluated on the spot, in the moment, usually while you're also trying to do the actual work. When your hours are defined, most of those requests answer themselves. I work until 3, let's talk after that. Okay, that doesn't leave any room for negotiation. It's just a fact about your day. And you can say it without feeling guilty for not jumping at someone's request, and it removes an enormous number of those daily little micro decisions. Now, if this is something new for you, understand that your hours will get tested, probably within the first week that you set them, okay? A client's going to message you at 9 o'clock at night, and they're going to expect a reply because that's kind of how you trained them. That's okay. That will change. A family member is going to assume that because you're home, you are available, and they might be a little put off when you tell them that you're not available. Or you might get that friend who's going to invite you to a midday lunch, and they're going to act surprised when you say no, okay? None of that means that your hours are the wrong idea. It just means that your hours are new, and new boundaries always get pushed before they get respected. So we're making small and steady movements here. A simple reply, like, I'll get back to you first thing in the morning during my work hours, does the job just fine, okay? You're not required to explain or justify or apologize for having a schedule, okay? That's a really good way to let clients who you used to reply to immediately at night or whenever, letting them know, okay, this is not going to be the norm moving forward. So I'll get back to you first thing in the morning during my work hours. That sends a very clear message that A, you have work hours, which means B, you have boundaries, which means C, you're not going to reply to 9 p.m. emails anymore. You are allowed to just have a schedule. Okay. And the business owners who keep their hours long term are rarely the ones with the most rigid rules. They're the ones who just hold the line the same way every single time it gets tested until the people around them stop testing it at all. And this isn't to say that you can't be flexible. My day starts by having my coffee in bed while reading the morning news report and clearing my inbox, okay? I work time into my schedule to get my workouts in. And in some parts of the week, that happens right after my coffee. And in some parts of the week, that's midday. One night out of the week, I am working late until about 8 p.m. because that's just how my day is booked. And it's the same routine every single week. If I have the ability to go to lunch with a friend when they ask in the middle of the week, I will absolutely do that. But having a schedule means if I'm smack dab in the middle of work and I can't afford to take that break, I have an easy response available because that's the norm for me to be working those hours unapologetically. Part of the beauty of working for yourself is that ability to build in that flexibility. We just have to be careful that we don't blur the lines. Working from home is a real research-backed advantage for both your output and your finances, and you never need to apologize for it or explain it. The same lack of structure that makes home-based work flexible, though, is also what generates decision fatigue and burnout when there's no clear start or stop time. Clients build trust through consistency, not constant availability. So your hours protect your deliverables even when nobody sees the hours themselves. Ain't nobody's business which hours you are working. You just need to know that you're working. Your hours do not have to be traditional. They just need to be repeatable because the science tells us that fighting your natural rhythm costs you more than it gives you. A defined schedule removes a whole category of daily decisions before they ever reach you. And when your hours get tested, which they will, holding the line is what makes them stick for good. You can't recover from burnout without having edges around your day. You can't reduce decision fatigue if your working hours are reinvented every single morning. Consistent hours are the thing that holds both of those fixes in place. The hours themselves are yours to choose. Early, late, split across nap time, built around school pickup, none of it matters more than the other. What matters is that you choose them once and then you keep choosing them on repeat until they stop feeling like a decision and they start feeling like it's just what you do. Listen, I send out a newsletter twice per month talking about all of these things and more, including related business news and grant alerts and all kinds of fun stuff. It's not something where you sign up and I immediately send you 100 sales emails. I truly just want to send you some valuable information. And then if I do have an opportunity to bring you further into my world, I will provide you with that opportunity. If you want to read more about some of these topics, I'll leave a link to my newsletter sign up in the show notes. In the meantime, you've got this, and I am cheering you on, and I will see you next Wednesday.